Okay, welcome to a very last minute, very special edition of Mark My Bird. Given the recent news in snowboarding, we have hit up one of my favorite snowboarders and hands down favorite announcers of all time to come on the podcast to kind of work through and sift through and start some discussions around, the recent announcement of X Games League and Snow League. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Todd Richards. Todd, how are we today, my man?
We are doing good, and I'm excited to talk about this because I feel like it could be a big shift in what we've had in the competition landscape for a long time here.
100%. And I kind of want to cue you with the first question. Okay, so let's start with Snow League, right? What do you think Snow League is aiming to accomplish? I kind of want to establish that for people that are like, oh, fuck that, it's Shaun White, or yay, pro snowboarders are going to be like NBA athletes. What is your take on what you think Snow League is trying to do?
So I feel like first and foremost, it's Shaun's legacy, right? Like I feel like snowboard competition, like this is all based on if you're a competitive snowboarder. Okay, like if you have any interest in sitting in the start gate and trying to please a panel of judges, this is amazing news for you. Everyone else probably doesn't affect them as much, but the people that go and risk their lives every weekend doing crazy tricks, this is huge. And competitive snowboarding gave Shaun everything. I think he wants to leave the sport with a huge stamp. He wants to leave his legacy, and he also, I feel like he has ambitions of maybe helping be the feeder series into the Olympics at some point. I feel like that is really what, because we all know that there's not a lot of money to be made in this. So
Yeah.
there can be like some self-satisfaction that you're actually giving back to the sport. And I kind of feel like that's what Shaun is trying to do here. And he also, I think he realizes that there's a huge hole within the sport in recent years for competitive opportunities for really, really good snowboarders.
Well, because the current landscape of, I would say, all of professional snowboarding, especially competitive snowboarding, it's widely reminiscent of kind of the American system of like you got the 1% and then there's 99, right? 1% of professional snowboarders are making life-changing money where they may never have to work again. The other 99%, they're gonna snowboard from anywhere from 3 to 10 years and then transition into that workforce. And I understand that what Snow League is trying to do is get athletes paid on a mainstream sports level, not NBA
Mm-hmm.
money. That's, we're talking 50-60 million dollars a year. I don't ever see that happening, but giving them the opportunity to not have to work a summer job. They can be a full-time professional snowboarder, which I have to say, I back that, right?
Now, are you confusing okay, so there's the X Games League and Snow League. And I think what you're referencing is all the memes from X Games League saying that these riders are not going to have to work a summer job. So interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah.
Because
Well, both of these new things, they both use the word league. They will both be having ski and snow. They're both going for a multi-stop worldwide tour. So they do, I mean, they have a lot of similarities, but yeah, they will have some differences. Main one right now being Shaun's is also only going to be applying to half pipe riders for the first season.
it's fast turnaround, though. There wasn't a lot of time. I feel like
Right.
just reading the press releases and talking to some people on the inside, there wasn't a ton of time to turn this around and create some crazy multi-stop, multi-sport thing.
Yeah. And I guess to clarify, I was focusing just on Snow League. I was thinking more along the lines of when it does hit that, their goal is to do 12 stops a year, right? To make it a global year-round tour. Kind of transitioning over to X Games, that one is a little fuzzier to me. So kind of how we did it at the mag, I had this opportunity to talk to Shaun, get all the info I could about Snow League. We dropped that on the site. Clavin kind of took the X Games League, right? So Mark, given your contacts at ESPN and X Games, who you've spoken with, what is the layout for X Games League as opposed to Snow League?
Yeah, I mean, there's some major differences, except for I don't know, before I talk about that, does Snow League have will they be doing a salary like option if you're in the league, or is it still going to be the classic, like if you win, you're making money. If you don't win, I'm sure there'll be somewhat of an appearance fee, because if it's going to be this big, there has to be something to get these
I don't
top level
I don't
riders.
feel like it is. I feel like it's kind of the most stock standard competitive. It's a tour, right? It's like TTR or like the snowboard tours that we used to have back in the day. It's a multi-stop tour. That's how we build heroes. You know, as long as he has a good media partner, this is how you can, you know, the traditional path of like, you know, you can win every weekend and build yourself up there. But I think the big shining diamond in the sky is like, we're going to guarantee you X amount of stops a year so you can follow this.
And if you if you're on the tour, you're obviously going to be bringing in outside sponsorships yourself. Just, you know, the classic, like, riders are going to get sponsored because they're going to be on probably, hopefully, a major network or some kind of broadcast that is actually out there. Yeah, that's the big difference. And the really interesting thing with the X Games League, XGL, they are a little bit farther out. They're not starting till 2026, but they want to have a salary-based system on their teams. If you are a rider that gets drafted by one of these new owners that they're looking for investors, and it's going to be like a major sports league where you get that contract for the year and you are going to have a guaranteed salary. Those numbers they're not really going out with those yet, but I wonder if it's, I mean, if you're making $65,000 to $100,000, that's more than a lot of professional snowboarders are bringing in right now.
And there's the question too. And this is the first time that I've actually heard a date attached to the snowboard league from X Games. 2026 makes sense. Olympics happen, then we go into this. Now, when you're saying, you know, there's a guaranteed salary for riders, and this is where I've had some conversations with people and I'm very confused because we don't know who this money is going to come from. My immediate thought goes to VCs or somebody super rich who's using this as a write-off or something, you know, or just likes the sports. But I tend to kind of, if it is the F1 model, it's kind of like VC groups or something like that. So what are they getting in return for dropping enough coin to pay your team enough of a salary to, because I'm assuming this, we may be looking at some exclusives here, because if you come in and you do the X Games Snow League, and we're going to pay you X amount of money to do this league, you're not doing Shaun White's league because we're paying you. You're going to wear these jerseys. You're going to be just, it happened with the WSL, and you couldn't go and do one-off events. You had to stay within this thing. So the question that I have is like, okay, so you take all this money that you get drafted onto this team. Now that brand that has contributed all this money to you is going to want prime placement, and that prime placement, if you're a Mark McMorris, he's already got Red Bull on his board. He's already got Burton on his board. But if that VC money is coming in and you sign on the dotted line that says, okay, well, your logo is going to go above here because these guys are actually paying more now. So I think there's a lot of webbing to kind of get through. I think it's amazing. I think it's really good for riders, like all these younger riders that are incredible, that have no backing, that have like literally they're the best at what they do, and they can barely get enough to scrape by.
Yep.
Which is why that league seems like, if that's what gets off the ground, like that's huge in snowboarding. You've never seen that, correct?
Well, we have seen that. Team USA. We've seen something very similar with countries coming in, and the riders maybe they get a country sponsor that sponsors the team. It kind of happened with Solomon. There was a lot of people on Solomon on Team USA. There was like these blanket sponsors. You get the blanket. What's the Italian outerwear that everyone's wearing right now on Team
Kappa?
USA? Yeah. So they're all on Kappa,
yeah.
Right? Same kind of deal. So we have seen that work. Now, I mean, we're talking way more money.
Yeah.
And if you're drafted onto that team, and if it really goes to the sky, like these guys have been talking about, like we want to make sure these riders are paid really well on top of their prize purses. There's going to be some people that have some expectations about pushing whatever branding they want.
And I think that's also, the Olympics is probably a great reason why they are waiting, but I think they're also waiting because of that. Like there's going to be a lot to set up there. And then that's when it comes into, if you're playing in the MLB, you have health insurance with the MLB. And I know that's a large topic with a lot of snowboarders, but if you're riding for Burton and you're doing well, you don't get health insurance from Burton, from what I understand.
Yeah. And it's another thing too.
Or like, any other brand.
And no brand does health insurance. Right. And I've been reading a lot into some of the comments in particular on Snowboard Mag and also on Snowboarder, and there was so much talk about the insurance, and that was never talked about when I was younger coming up. And my God, based on the amount of money I pay for insurance for my family of 4, it's insane that we have kids that we're expecting to literally put their lives on the line every weekend. Lucas Foster, if he decks on a alley double McTwist, he's fucking done.
He's
so
done.
It's like, and these kids, like some kids just do not have insurance. And a lot of the other kids are lucky because they come from socialized medicine countries where it's like, yeah, we get insurance through just living here. So I think that is it's a big risk for whoever is going to take on that team. And I'm really interested to see how they would navigate that, because the liability is off the chart.
What did you do during your career for health insurance? Just wondering, as a personal,
Paid. I had smart parents that said the most important thing you can do when you're in risky endeavors is to have insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most. I mean, that's back in the day when I was paying like $450 a month for really good coverage, and now it's like if you want to have really good coverage, number one, you can't tell the insurance companies what you do, because there's no freaking way a health insurance company is going to cover you. There's Lloyd's of London that you can go and insure specific body parts, but the premiums for that are crazy. So it's like you have to be able to like find a Lloyd's of London or someone like that to come in and provide the blanket insurance. It'll probably only be while you're competing, not while you're training, not while you're free riding. It'll only be when you're in the jersey, you'll be insured.
Yeah.
But it's a great topic to cover, and it's crazy because I don't think people talk about it enough.
I've been wondering, will these leagues be the foundation for unions, right? Like for rider unions starting up. Like the NBA has the NBA PA, Players Association. The NFL has the NFLPA. I guess I need to know how much money is going to be at stake here, but at a certain point, I think the riders are going to need that, because we've seen the contest organizers be like, don't worry, let us take care of it. Come to us with your problems. That doesn't do shit. It's never done shit. So will that, snowboard union, Players Association, Athlete Association kick off because of that? Will the contest be open to allowing that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's, everyone has to be on board. You know how hard it is to boycott a final when the wind is blowing 70 miles an hour across. There's always that one person who's like, fuck this. I flew all the way here from wherever. I'm going to compete. You guys don't want to compete? Great. Makes it easier for me to win. The money has to be big enough for these riders compensated, where it's not a huge liability that they can, if they all get together and say, I'm not going to do this event, or we're not going to participate in this unless X, and X is done for us. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of riders that are in that position to make that call, because literally they're paycheck to paycheck, and there's people are scrapping. And when people are scrapping, they are hungry and they do desperate shit that is mainly short-term focused and not long-term focused. And I don't blame anybody. It's the nature of the game right now. It's dog eat dog out there in just in life, never mind in these niche sports that we're doing.
As far as you seeing different leagues kind of pop up now and again under different tour names and everything, with Shaun and obviously some big names backing the Snow League compared to X Games and their historic name, their recognition, do you see kind of which one would be more popular in the short term, or do you have an idea of which one do you think would take off with the backing they have?
Look, we're dealing at a time. Shaun got paid to show up at X Games and then compete. Shaun White's name, I believe, is bigger than X Games.
Agree.
When you have a big marquee event that's actually writing you a check to come and take the money, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to give you a check so you can come and win all the money. His name is bigger, and I do think that he's tied into enough places. Look, the fandom for Shaun is out of control. He's a rock star. It's the closest we have to a rock star.
100%. Think about how many times you tell someone on a plane, at an airport, at a coffee shop, whatever it is, it may come up. You meet a stranger and you say, I work in the snowboard industry. Todd is like, I'm a pro snowboarder. I'm like, oh yeah, I work for Snowboard Magazine, or formerly Snowboarder Magazine. 7 times out of 10, someone either says, "Do you know Shaun White?" or "Hey, I know Shaun White." That's the immediate name that they he's our Tony Hawk, right? He's our Kelly Slater in that regard.
He is. But I also feel like, but the two brands, the Shaun White brand and X Games brand, they're right there. They're right there. And you can argue that X Games made Shaun White, and Shaun White helped X Games after he took off. So in my opinion about what I'm seeing right now, and there's all these leagues. There's Street League, there's Surf League, WSL, there's there's X Games League and Shaun's League. Everyone that has controlling stake in these needs to get into a room and talk about what is the long-term plan for all of this.
Yep.
Because ultimately it went from in snowboarding, it went from no contest to all of a sudden on the horizon there's fucking 60 contests a year. So it went from famine to feast. And the problem I see with that is that all this money is going to come flooding in really quickly. And the way that these big money people, these VC people work that have tons of money, as soon as they're not getting a return on investment, one's going to pull out. And all the rest are going to follow them, and it's going to create a huge vacuum, and we're going to be in a worse place than we were before. And we want to have the more contests, the better. The more support we have for these different leagues and these different sports, the better. The rising tide raises all ships. Let's fucking go. But let's do it smart and maybe have a cohesive, like, let's have a think group, a think tank that has been from all of these different sports to sit down and talk about like what we're talking about right now and make some of these people understand that are going to be coming in with tons of money, that this is a long play. You're not going to see a return on investment for a full cycle, 10 years.
Yep.
2 Olympics at least.
Yep.
So it's like to have that kind of a thought process to create these heroes. We want to root for Patty Zhao when she's 9, and we want to root for her when she's 19. And the only way we can do that is by like having a cohesive thread line through the whole thing, not 2 factions of events fighting against each other and not letting people compete in each one.
And you also have Rockstar and currently all the FIS stuff that's going to make all this muddy as well.
Sure. But like you said, Tom, like a riders union could help to alleviate some of that, have a rider's say in this, and map out what the next 10 years looks like for a rider. And another thing too that we're kind of forgetting is like there's no like farm league for these riders to come up anymore. All of this shit's invite only. The US Open is dead, which was our last real open competition. We need to figure out a way, like the Gatorade Free Flow Tour used to do, to give the riders an opportunity to get into this. I mean, I feel like X Games could have really taken over where the open class doesn't exist anymore. X Games opens, and like you're out there and you're finding these young kids.
That is one thing that Scotty was talking about, is for these drafts that X Games League is proposing. It sounds like, I mean, if you are of a certain caliber, you can declare yourself into the draft. You might not get picked, but there is going to be at least that, I mean, big promises, but yeah, like there could be a potential of, if you think you're good enough and obviously you have some backing, toss yourself in the hat, and then hopefully one of the new owners picks you. But then it kind of comes, at least there's no farm team to get to that level. But if you're on that level, it's no longer like, we're at X Games, it's going to be a lot of monster athletes invited, or, oh, we're at Rockstar, like it's going to kind of lean towards Do Tour or all that. Yeah.
It's interesting to see how I feel like there's going to be 10 different drafts of the way this thing is going to work out. And I honestly feel, Shaun's is going to be the one we're going to look at in the short term. Yeah. And it's what's going to take over for, I mean, when Do Tour used to be the Do Tour and we had 3 or 4 stops, the Do Cup at the end, that was great. Riders had something to focus on, or TTR. When the TTR was happening, that was the greatest. There was this cumulative point battle. People were doing pipe and slope and all this different stuff, trying to get as many points as they could. And it was fun, and it was for the riders, and you didn't have the thumb of FIS on your back who would just cancel an event after everyone flies to Mammoth from halfway across the planet. And just, it's like there was more riders saying it because it was rider done. So I feel like, like Shaun's is going to be the closest to what we, used to see in the Vans Triple Crown or the Do Tour. And I think, there's going to be a lot of different darts thrown against the board for the X Games League. You know, there's going to be some figuring out. I think, you know, maybe they built the car without making the engine first. You know what I'm saying? Like
well, even like how they announced it, just those text slides that kind of looked like it was for a business meeting. Like truthfully, kind of was like, I wonder if they heard that Shaun was announcing his league at the beginning of this week and kind of were like, hey, we've been
I don't
working on
think so,
something. We
dude.
want to get this out. Yeah.
Well, maybe, you know what, you're probably right, because it's like, you know, if you're on the inside, you already knew. You got the early press release a week ago,
Right.
from like Annie Fast sent it out to all of us, and so, and that was a few days. So maybe it forced X League's hand a little bit.
But they also
You know,
have Summer X coming up right now. They have a lot of media opportunities, so why not announce a huge thing right before that? And it will have a summer component, even though they're going to be two different leagues. They're not going to be, from what I understand, they're not going to be summer and snow guys on the same team, which kind of brings me to a question. Do you think having skiing in Snow League was a necessity to get it off the ground and to work for Shaun's?
I think it's smart.
Me
I
too.
think, you know, look, as much as a lot of people would like that animosity to still exist, it doesn't. It doesn't fucking exist anymore. You know, and it's just the way that we can get more participation, more money into building great snowboard parks, more money into like facilities like Woodward, is because we're all using the slopes and we're all hitting jumps and we're all doing this. I think it would have been really foolish not to do it. And I think Shaun and his team recognized that there's no ski events either. So if he can come in and provide, it's, you know, the same slope style, the same pipe for skiers and snowboarders, it's a win-win. You know, you're killing two birds with one stone.
I agree. I do have a question that's been looming in my head, and Todd, I'd like to get your take on it because of your experience as a professional snowboarder and one of the best announcers our culture has ever seen. Is a mainstream audience ready to understand snowboarding in the sense that anyone can watch an NBA basketball game, right? The green team last night beat the green jersey team beat the white jersey team by 25 points. They're the NBA champions. Soccer, with the Euros are going on right now. It's a 3-1 win. Algeria beats England, whoever it is.
Sure.
Is a mainstream audience ready to understand the concept of why Ayumu's run beats Scotty's run, or why Scotty's beats Kaishu's run?
I think in terms of what Shaun's doing for his head-to-head format for the final 8 guys, I think it's very easy to comprehend that. Yeah. I mean, granted, knowing that we may lose 2 heroes, there may be 2 heroes that go into the final that meet up straight away, or we may have, you know, the 2 best we would want to see battle out in the last bracket. It just doesn't work out mathematically like that. So we may have that, but you're going to have that A versus B. And I think the average fan of the sport that maybe turns on snowboarding can see the head-to-head bracket. We did head-to-heads back in the day. There was OP contests back in the day, and the OP's format was different than the other contests that we had because it was head-to-head knockout. So theoretically, you could have someone, it was head-to-head all the way through the event. So you could have someone fight, and make it all the way to the final, which was kind of exciting. It was a devastating day for whoever it was if they didn't eat very well that was fighting their way up, but it was cool. But I think that Shaun's will bring excitement in the top 8, but it's also that responsibility falls on the broadcast. Yep. Is to make people care and make people know what's going on. Sure, Ayumu, the subtleties of what Ayumu does versus the incredible technicality of what Scotty does, you have to educate the audience in what they're seeing because the scores will not make any sense.
Yep.
So, you know what? I'm curious. Will Scotty do Shaun's series?
That's a question that immediately popped into my head as soon as I saw both of the leagues, and I was like, how does this work? You know?
For one start, I mean, Shaun's is going to start in 2025, so technically XGL will not have a stop until 2026, so why not?
Well, yeah. And also going back to, you know, Clavin, you were talking about which one Todd was kind of listing toward in terms of which one he thinks will take off. Mark, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but the other day when we were talking on the phone, you did have a really good point. You said X Games has kind of had 25 years to figure it out, right? And to be as relevant as humanly possible in the mainstream space. And Shaun comes out with this thing, they drop their thing the day before. That's where it got a little bit confusing. Shaun's feels a little bit newer and a little bit more exciting on top of the name that he brings along with it. And that's no shade toward X Games, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want to see both succeed. I need to drive that home. I hope both can succeed. But to me, Shaun's feels a little bit more new and appealing, personally.
Devil's advocate is X Games did, I guess, just get, bought by a new company. They are bringing in a lot of new blood in. They had the misstep with Young Gravy that everybody always talks about. But I mean, all in all, they're pretty new as well. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, they do have the long standing name recognition of kind of the past 25 years. The only thing though, is when you go into Shaun's it's just the one discipline right now, which is great because they can kind of probably work through a lot of kinks. And
that's for first year though.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
yeah,
first year.
Well, that's not, like,
dude,
that's why
I see that as a smart move. I think if they tried to go full bore year one and say they did slope and maybe a street style and half pipe and skiing and snowboarding at the same time, that's putting the cart before the horse. I see that as a smart business play.
Right, but I'm just saying, when X Games if it comes out swinging with all of those disciplines, they would be around like 2026 adding stuff in. They come out with everything already. Just depends. I mean, yeah, everything's going to take a lot of work through.
Let's say for devil's advocate, everything goes smashingly. Now we'll put all the apples out and see which apples are better. Shaun owns Aaron Style. We haven't really seen anything from Aaron Style. He still owns the IP. The IP still has some clutch here in the world. Shaun comes out, does this half pipe and slope style. Then he starts dropping Aaron Styles around, and that's, just builds this, the Snow League. There's a big air component in this. When you look at the X Games League, it's athletes competing in all these different disciplines, but it's still X Games. It's still like, yeah, we're going to have multiple stops, but it's more fragmented, and the audience now has to do the point tabulation themselves. I mean, I'm sure there'll be graphics that pop up saying like Scotty James's league, and he's also got Eileen Gu on his team, and here they are. But this guy, Shaun Fitzsimmons needs to come in and do this to bring them to the next thing. People fucking hate math. They don't want to do fucking math. No one likes math except for engineers, right? And I'm sure they don't even fucking like math. So it's like, the less math that a person has to do to enjoy what's happening, the better. And if your selling point is you got to do the math at home in order for you to root for your league, you got to be doing up some adding and subtracting. When Shaun's format is bing bang bong, we have a winner. Let's bring that winner into the next event as the favorite. Bing bang bong, we have a winner. Oh my God, he won 2. He's heading towards the cumulative point. We're not looking at all these different other athletes trying to go for this cumulative thing in all these different disciplines, and these disciplines that maybe you don't really care about. It just seems like, that what's the guy with all the strings on the fucking board, like he's trying to solve a mystery. There's that meme, the guy's like, like that.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm picturing right now, of people in different places at different events with strings going to them, and like, who's got the points? And maybe if you're like a bettor, and we're gonna work in some live betting to this. Maybe that's great. Maybe that's a component that will live in this as well.
I'm gonna disagree and say people love math. Wall Street bros just are looking at numbers all day going across. Golf is just one long game of people doing very slow math, and then basketball, nonstop numbers going up.
Have you ever met a snowboarder? Have you met a snowboarder before? I'm just curious. Like,
I mean, I do terrible math, but I don't know.
157. What's that, like 12 feet long?
You have to in live competition. You have to add up 1800s. You have to count and add up 360s.
I just say numbers. I'm not doing any math. I'm recognizing shapes and putting it. That's the crazy thing, Clavin, when you talk about like what I do. 1800 is the name of a trick now. I'm not doing any math. That is just the shape of a trick, the same as like doing a backside area. It's just what that's called.
Yeah.
It's 1800. Like, just comes out. But okay. Like I digress. Some people love math. Some people love the cumulative point thing. Some people love to root for their team and see where it is. But when you bring in all these other different components to it, there's one thing, like if you're watching football, soccer, or F1, you can kind of, it's all within one genre, this one type of sport. You know, now you've got the snow league, and you've got a dude doing big air, a guy doing flip style, a woman doing big air, and then the men's and women's. There's a lot to freaking take in, which could be really fun, but you got to make it fun. Right. You got to make it fun. You got to sell people on that. And right now, judging by my kids, the average attention span is about 13 seconds for anything.
Straight up.
Yeah, dude, what are we doing?
It's funny you mentioned that, because obviously you think Scotty James, obviously he has those F1 ties. As soon as I heard about this X Games League, I was like, I wonder if they're going to have like a constructors, like a team championship, and then like a riders or individual championship.
Mm-hmm.
That's all yet to be determined. But
well, he did say there would be X Games individual winners in each sport. So it's not gonna change that, but it feels like the focus has gone from the individual winner of, say, halfpipe to the focus is more on the league performance, than it is on the individual victory.
Todd, if you say 26, 27-year-old you in your prime were alive right now as one of the biggest halfpipe snowboarders alive, what league would you go with?
If I had to do an exclusive,
if you couldn't do them both,
I think I would. I think honestly, it's going to be easier for Shaun White's tour to create heroes, because you're focused on not only everyone else's performance for an overall, but all you need to do is focus on what you need to do to put together a solid run to go home with the win that weekend. And there's a shining star on top of the tree that you're climbing to try to get at the overall. I think it's easier to focus that way.
Do you think this cuts into natural selection tours lane, right? Into their business and their successes?
I don't think so, because I feel like Natty Select lives on its own island. And Natty Select, of course, everyone's dealing with funding. Everyone needs more money to fulfill the prophecy of what they come out in October and say, this is what this year's event's going to be. And then December comes around, you're like, fuck, we just burned through all that budget and we haven't even put our foot on snow yet. So I feel like, given that, natural selection lives on an island where people want to see anti-competition competition. I mean, natural selection is the easiest for people to wrap their brain around that haven't ridden halfpipe or can't relate to hitting a 50-foot jump. They can relate to riding and picking their way down the mountain. And it's, I think Natty Select does a really good job of portraying the quote unquote extreme aspect of it. Because I mean, when you do this pulled out angles and you see what Jared Ellison's like on top of 2 years ago, and how steep that is, and how crazy the exposure these riders are on, I think that sells itself. It really sets itself apart from what we're talking about here.
But if these tours broadcast they get up to 6, 7, or even 12, like T-Bird was saying, events a year round, natural selection is going to get compared to that right off the bat. And I know it's harder to do in remote areas, but everyone's going to say, this is what we want. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be bummed if they're watching in June a major snowboarding contest that's going down in the Southern Hemisphere, or I guess July.
In my eyes, like you guys are saying, like the format is kind of stale, right? Like X Games has had a long time to figure this out, and maybe they floundered, maybe they're on their way back with this. And even in Shaun's vision, halfpipe is halfpipe. You got to have a ski resort that is willing to commit God knows amount of money and snowmaking to make a 22-foot deep super pipe, there's only a few places that are even capable of doing that. So I start to think about, why not think outside the box? Why not put a halfpipe in an urban area that gets a shitload of snow that has a hill? We need to start thinking, like, look how good Red Bull Heavy Metal does. And being in the Midwest last year and going to that event and seeing the amount of enthusiasm there was, can you imagine a half pipe? Even if it was a 12-foot deep pipe, maybe you don't have to it doesn't always have to be a 22-foot deep pipe. It's a half pipe competition. We have the best riders in the world. This is what you get. You get a 12-foot deep, it's going to be perfect, but you get a 12-foot deep pipe, in Syracuse, New York, down a street.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be
and they
awesome.
just something cool, like something outside the box, and everyone would be like, "Oh my god!" Or like a big air event, or a big air or a street style down a steep street, like we
Yep.
saw with some of those edits, like Austin Sweeten's edit that was, you know, a few years back in one of the Absinthe movies. Like that kind of stuff is so interesting to me because it's not what you typically see.
Yep.
And if thinking outside the box like that, that's where the opportunities lie. And I think, like, you know, you have brands like Red Bull or Rockstar or some of the people that can shuck and jive a little bit, that don't have to stick to this format. I think the biggest weakness of either one of these events is putting themselves in a box where they are competing to maybe at some point select an Olympic team. So they need to stay within these FIS parameters, because if we don't, we're not going to be able to have the feeder series. But that makes it less interesting for us as fans of snowboarding and fans to come.
I think for me, you know, just knowing what I know about how the snowboard industry works and the incorporation of VCs into our business, that's probably one of the biggest red flags for me. Because like you said, I think it's a very astute point that you hope that they're getting in a room and they're saying, what does this look like 10 years from now? And if the VC guys come back and gals come back and say, oh, we're not, what do you mean 10 years? We want to we want ROI in 3, we're
Mm-hmm.
fucked. We're
Yeah.
fucked. Because it just
Yeah,
doesn't
and
work
that's
that way.
what I
We've
mean. Like,
seen it time and again.
what are they coming in for? Like, what do they expect? Like, why are they giving this money? I mean, of course, there's the very wealthy people out there that are just fans of snowboarding, and for them to write a check for $10 million is like us going to Target. You know,
Yep.
it doesn't, we can't even relate to that kind of like filthy wealth. These people are amazing if they don't want anything in return. However, the world doesn't work like that at all, really. And typically the people that have the most money are the most butt puckered when it comes to giving it out and not getting anything in return.
Yep. There's a reason they have that much money.
Exactly. And I'd
Yeah.
like to believe that maybe there are some angel investors out there that really want to come in and just do it for the sport. But I mean, dude, I don't know. I mean, like it's like, who's going to subsidize stuff like this? This is like, you know, when like this, I'll say, for example, like watching the WSL event that just happened in El Salvador. So El Salvador as a country has really gotten behind surfing because they see it as a viable source of money for tourism. So they have a vested interest in investing a ton of money into making surf culture there great. We don't have that. We need that. Country, if some of these events could go to countries that have a vested interest in, you know, let's make this the snowboard mecca, and they bring in some money. Countries have a lot of fucking money.
Yep.
You know, and you just got to think about who's got money. Governments have a ton of money. You know, they can, I don't know. It's someone's going to have to be willing to take the hit. And I just don't, in my small pea-sized brain, I don't see anyone that's not going to want something huge and fast to at least break even.
Same.
As far as Olympic feeder stuff, like besides a union being formed and trying to change world ranking stuff, which would probably, would that even be possible to like take away the FIS power to bring it back to that? The other thing is, if countries still had lesser known riders going and earning points, I mean, technically they could still pick, if their top guy was in Shaun's league and missed all of the qualifiers, maybe even, couldn't he still get a last round bid? Obviously, if he's winning all these massive ones there by the coaches, like, isn't there a coach select out of the 4 riders that go to each discipline?
You mean for the Olympics?
Yeah. Because everyone always talks about that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do have to have a minimum amount of points, though. You can't just be the dude that flopped the entire time.
Right.
You know, you have to actually put the effort in.
Yeah.
But there is coach's discretion. You know, who's going to have the better odds of winning something. You know, and that's another thing we've been saying this for years, and it even goes back to, you know, Terry boycotting and me going to the Olympics back in '98. Like, the FIS got control because snowboarding was in a position at that point where we thought we needed to level up. We thought we needed to go in a certain direction, and the path of least resistance was laying down with the enemy, quote unquote. You know, now fast forward however long it's been since 1998. I hate math. But we're in a position now where, you know, we're at a crossroads again of We have all these different things coming up. Olympics, the snowboarding is one of the top 2 most exciting and most viewed things of the Olympics. We are in the driver's seat, but it brings me back to that point where like there's always going to be somebody that doesn't want to join, because it has to be 100% all in. We all, as riders that compete at that level, they all have to be in on like, we are boycotting FIS and we're going to do our own riders union. And FIS is going to listen to us and we're going to make the decisions, and we're going to have to, we get it that to go to the Olympics and the IOC, you are the ticket in there, but you're going to listen to us or you're not going to get anybody. I just like, if there's another time, another shot at this, it's right now.
The last time I looked at Olympic rating stuff, snowboarding was not in even the top 5 for Winter Olympics viewing. I'm talking like NBC.
Yeah. Well, this just comes from a broadcast.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
For NBC, and like Shaun, but this is also, it's like Eileen Gu and Shaun.
Right.
Those are 2 heroes. Shaun is gone. We don't have a replacement for Shaun right now in the U.S.
Yeah.
Chloe
still brings, I'm sure, tons of views as well.
No, yeah. Chloe's going to bring it, but if Chloe doesn't go, if Chloe's hurt, or she just decides that she's done, I don't think that's going to be the case. But like, there will be a time when Chloe decides to go, and we're not doing enough to bring up a next generation of heroes.
Yep.
And that's, we have to give people a reason to care. There has to be stories that are told, and it can't be, I think the way that Shaun's competition is easy for people to digest. He needs to have a solid media partner for it. It can't be just streaming on Quibi. It's got to be, if you want to get eyeballs, it's got to be on NBC, or maybe not NBC. Maybe a different network, but it has to be when people are flipping through the channels, because I don't really watch TV anymore, but there's a shitload of people that watch TV.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it needs to happen like that.
My big, or one thing that I found very funny about T-Bird's interview with Shaun was, he says, T-Bird asks if he's going to ride in it. He says, no, I'm not going to ride in it. But then at the very end of that portion of the question, he goes, but like, I'll update you if anything changes. So like that sentence alone, I was like, I wonder if he would come in. I think
to have, in my opinion, it would be silly if Shaun didn't compete in the first one, just from a marketability standpoint or something. There has to be, Shaun is such a competitor, and dude, he's still so freaking good. Like, and I feel like he kind of has to compete in the very first one, the inaugural. That's my gut instinct.
I kind of thought the same thing. And then I'm like, well, Shaun only wants to compete if he has a chance to win. I think Shaun does.
Do you still think he's that? Do you still think he has that?
I do think so. I don't think that ever changes. I think that's just like if you challenge Michael Jordan to one-on-one right now, he'd probably decline because he probably doesn't have a chance of winning. I'm not saying you, but like an NBA player, right? Or something along those lines. But the next thought immediately in my head was, okay, if Shaun doesn't compete, what does it look like? He needs to have a massive presence on that broadcast. Maybe he's the host, maybe he's the main guy that welcomes the crowd in, explains what's going on, throws to the broadcast booth, hands out the awards, is down at the bottom of the pipe, maybe interviewing riders. Like, he needs to be seen on that broadcast a shitload. And I think that'll be a huge marker for success for them.
There's nobody that knows the ins and outs of competitive. I would, how great it would be for me to sit next to Shaun and talk to him and just shoot the shit in a competition. Like, he knows everything.
Yep.
There's only a couple people in the world that know what it's like to be 25 feet out of a half pipe. For him to have that insight, for him, like, it's invaluable as a commentator to be able to tap somebody like that. So yeah, I absolutely think what you're saying. He needs to be the showman. He needs to be the MC riling everybody up. It's a huge responsibility, but when you are, it would show me that Shaun's not just phoning this in either. He has to have some skin in the game. Mm-hmm. Put his ass on the line. If he's not going to, he's not going to compete in it. He'll start it off. He'll forerun it. Put on a show and then go around high-fiving people. Maybe he does the pep talk with the judges. Maybe he's the what is it called? The competition commissioner.
Yeah.
Like he's the one behind the judges. Like, Shaun's everywhere. Like it'd be insane if his footprint was all over this thing. And I don't think that he doesn't want to do that. You know,
Yeah.
I think that he's in a different space than he was before. I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked to Shaun in years, but I feel like I gather that by his interviews, and you know, he's older. He doesn't have the weight of trying to defeat everybody in this anymore. I think he can kind of reflect on it. He's got a really good. I mean, fuck, JJ Thomas is like his boy.
Yep.
JJ's one of the people that he's like a confidant I have in snowboarding. I run shit by all the time, and I think that he's just smart. He knows. He's been in the different eras.
It'd be interesting too if he didn't do that. You're basically setting up a tour for probably a non-American to be top. You're gonna have top three, like international top three every stop for the first little while, because as you said, we don't really have that next hero coming up, which would also then be pretty hard to get a major following maybe from the US.
Yeah, that's very, very true. You know, but there can be exceptions to that. Unfortunately, you know, Ayumu's draw is the fact that he just doesn't even want to interact. But look at Raibu. Raibu is incredible. Like it's just like, and it's, you know, I want to cheer for who is the coolest. You know, it doesn't matter to me that if someone's from the USA. You know, that's Olympic shit. That's, you know, you can be proud of your nation and your national riders, but there's people all over the world that cheer for Shaun White.
True.
You know, during the Olympics or anything. He transcends country. He is just what it is to be the pinnacle of personality in the sport. And I feel like we can get that from someone not from the US. Look at McMorris. Canadian bastard, goes out there and fucking kills it. I fucking love that guy.
100%. I agree. And in like
someone like Ika, we need a really good Finnish halfpipe rider is what we really need.
Yes, we'll put Rene in the halfpipe, make him do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Look at Rene Renekongas. Like, can you imagine? Like, Rene is a rock star just because he's just like a ball of energy. So if you can get behind that, and it's our job as the commentators and the media to be like, this is the dude. Because that's how Shaun became Shaun. He was really good, but he just, you know, he had a nickname and he had the crazy hair, you know.
Yeah, I think within snowboarding, the country borders are nowhere near as important. It was more talking like for that outreach into the mainstream. But yeah.
Well, especially in like a league setting. But to Todd's point, think about when Haldor made his name at X Games. The entire snowboard industry was like, this is the fucking guy. Like he's ripping harder than anyone. He's having more fun than anyone. So it's finding those key people. You look at the NBA, right? And the question is, if you had a 5-on-5 versus the 5 best US players and the 5 best international players would probably win. Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid, and like an American audience gets behind those international players because they're just characters and they're unbelievable at what they do.
I'll say this though, I feel like the current state of halfpipe and slopestyle in a cumulative points race that is dictated by FIS has stripped the personality out of it. It's more training.
Yeah.
Because you look at, so out of the 4 or 5 top guys in the world, you know, 4 of them don't have a personality. It's like they're just getting a chance to like come out of their shell a little bit and show you that personality. Because it's just been head down, like fucking head down. I got to get these points. There's no chance to like no one really parties anymore at these events. You don't really see the craziness. I mean, they party, but like, it's like, you know, I certainly know a lot more about the off-hill antics of someone like Nick Baden.
Yep.
Or like, you know, like that, or say, I mean, that was a really bad example, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you know, you get these people that they're just as fun off the hill as they are on the hill. Danny Davis. Danny's a great example of kind of that last generation of pipe personality, you know, and his personality was just as big as his performances in the pipe. Scotty's kind of has that, but it's kind of like on a weird, like a cheesy 80s sitcom kind of way. Like the cheddar is dripping off of that. And I know what he's going for. He's kind of a fucking cheesy dude. I love it, you know, but like
it's funny you mentioned that because literally the second thought I had when I heard about Shaun Snow League is I thought to myself, if I'm one of these VC people that's funding this, I'm not putting a dime towards Shaun's tour unless they have some sort of behind the scenes series with a serious distribution partner, because that's the new model, right? I got into F1 because of Drive to Survive. I'm now finding myself watching a little bit of golf because I watch Full Swing. So if they want this to succeed from a storytelling standpoint, you tell the majority of the story through a behind the scenes series, and then you tell the rest of it live on air. That's the new model. And I know that's a crazy ask because it's a shitload of money. I don't really understand
It's
how the
not,
Netflix
though. I
world
don't feel
works.
like it's. I feel like that formula's been there in snowboarding for a long time, and I honestly feel like that's why X Games has faltered, because they used to really get embedded with the riders, and they would go to each rider's house 3 months before, and they would do these in-depth interviews and like get in the sock drawers. Like, what's in your sock drawer? What do you like to eat in the morning? I
Yep.
want to see your daily routine. Like, and that stuff kind of has fallen by the wayside because, number one, budgetary constraints, and number two, people aren't that fucking interesting anymore.
There was
No joke.
also though.
I was watching Drive to Survive, and that dude Yuki Tsunoda, I forget who he drives for. They were following him around for a day, right? And he goes and picks up his trainer. As soon as his trainer gets in the car, that dude rips a fart. The F1 driver. And the trainer's like, that's the most fucked up smelling thing I've ever smelled. Yuki Tsunoda's losing it laughing, and I'm like, that's my guy. Like that's the dude I'm rooting for. And now I watch F1 and I'm like, where's Yuki Tsunoda? Because I saw a piece of like his humor ability. And for those that are going to kind of counter with, oh, just tell it through Instagram, fuck that. No, because of the
Long form,
algorithm.
long form.
Because of the fucking algorithm. If you're trying to story tell through Instagram as a brand, you need to understand that 16% of your audience is going to see all of it. If Scotty James
Much
is
less,
not in
yeah.
the if Scotty James is not in the algorithm and he's trying to tell stories leading up to an event, people are going to have no fucking clue. 92% of them are going to have no clue what's going on when they're trying to finish that story during a broadcast. There's got to be some other piece to it.
The other thing though is there used to also be more riding. There was not just a finals.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, like how are you going to be a fan of someone when you only see them once and they have 3 runs and then they're off your screen until next year? Like,
Yeah.
Well, that's Shaun's. I mean, I think that's the beauty of having a multi-stop tour.
well, the multi-stop tour and like the whole idea of having just building drama through that. I mean, they could even do it in a day because if you're going to go head to head, you're going to get multiple rounds. But just having a rider come into your feed a few times over a week riding, you all of a sudden, hey, I like this guy. You get to spend more time with him or girl. And it's just, I think that's another big, like kind of just shot to the head. I just did not like how it's all of a sudden, it's that big dramatic moment. But why would you care about that big dramatic moment if you're not invested in any of the people there?
Well, there's no more publications either, dude. And that's the thing, is we had 3 magazines going at once at one point, and there's all these different snowboard movies, and quite frankly, there wasn't as many good people. And now the average kid who goes to Woodward 3 times a week in 2 years is better than we were at our peak. That's fucking fact.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
And they're everywhere now. The good kids are a dime a dozen. So now what do you look for? Okay, so there's your ability to stand on top of a podium and hold a fucking Red Bull can. There's, can you make it to the Olympics? But more importantly is, how are you as a hero or an interesting personality? And it's great that you brought up, you brought up F1 and just talking about, like, for the longest time, I loved F1. And I only knew who Kimi Räikkönen was because he was such a personality. He was so fucking funny because he was so not that sport. And they highlighted that. And it was, I feel like we need to start bringing back and creating more of like the hero worship. I want to see more personalities like Shaun Palmer, and we need the rivalries, like the whole thing that happened with Jared Ellison and Gigi. I thought that was fantastic. As far as like, shit talking and all that stuff, that's fucking great, dude. Even if it's not half as gnarly as we all think it is behind the scenes, it's great because it causes, there's a battle. And Shaun versus Ayumu, or Shaun versus Scotty, like there's not as much shit talking as there used to be. Like someone basically saying straight up in an interview, I'm going to fucking take that guy down. And name checking. Like that shit is like how it works, dude. You look at, like, you look at like what's trending, and it's, you know, what's the guy's name? Not Blake Paul. The guy's gonna fight Tyson. What's his name? Not Aaron Paul.
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul.
Yeah.
It's just all shit talking.
Yeah.
It's all shit talking, and you get behind the corner that you like that guy's shit talking better than the other guy's shit talking.
Yep. 100%.
And then they battle it out.
It's interesting you brought up Raibu when we were talking about that behind the scenes series. I mean, that dude is just a fucking magnet, a nucleus of positive energy and hilarity. Like, he's such a fucking character that I can see his phone ringing exponentially more if this thing takes off. I could see
We
him.
don't have Danny Cass anymore. We don't have these people. You know, like Danny Cass, Danny Davis, like Sage. You know, there are great personalities in snowboarding still, but they're not as magnanimous as they once were.
Yep. 100%. I think we need to have another episode. I don't know. Maybe we make this a monthly once this thing kicks off, because I could talk about this shit all day. And quite frankly, you know, to put it bluntly, it's a good thing these leagues kicked off, because we are having this conversation. For the listener at home, Todd just hit us up and texted us and like, yo, let's talk about this. And we just fired up our computers and made it happen. Like, that's
behind the bib, dude. I think that's something that needs to happen, is that we need to know what makes people tick in it. And that if it takes us digging around, you know, and kind of just, you know, bring these conversations to the surface so people are more engaged. And I'm all for that. It's better for snowboarding. I want to snowboard and see it back to what it was in its heyday.
Yeah. And we're also talking about this on June 18th. But then the other thing is we were talking about this the other day. If these commissioners or these new owners come in and buy teams for X Games League, they're going to need managers or people that know who to draft. So there's going to be a little bit of I wonder what that budget's like to pick up a manager for maybe one of us.
I always wanted to be a scout. A snowboard scout would be a pretty fun job.
Yeah, we're thinking about starting an agency before these leagues really get going. We can have a little scout agency going.
Yeah, and that's what it should be, just agencies on agency. Like, you know, agency on agency violence.
We're thinking about calling it Mark My Board.
Thoughts on both Shaun and Scotty also being like, oh, we want the other contest to thrive. Do you think that's how they really feel deep down in their souls as they're both launching the same week?
It behooves everyone to have, it'll just bring more into it. I think wishing ill on any piece of snowboarding at this point is crazy. And that's why it's weird to, like, there's so little money and there's so little in the nucleus now compared to what there used to be. Anyone talking shit on anyone else in the brands within the nucleus of snowboarding is fucking crazy.
Yep.
Like, let's fucking go. Like, in 5 years, you can go back to shit talking everybody again. Who cares? I don't give a fuck. But it's like, at this point, like, if there was a ski brand that is paying fucking riders and employing snowboarders and putting snowboard ads in the magazines, fuck it. That's great. We took their money. If you have ski animosity, we took skiers' money and we're putting it towards snowboarding. Who cares? Who gives a shit?
Yep. Could not agree more.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, let's do this more. You guys are great. I miss you. I feel like we only hang out when we're shivering. So this is fantastic.
Yeah. Or speaking of, we shouldn't be shit talking, or when we're just shit talking me and my blurry photos from the booth, the safety of the booth, just taking big swing. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude,
I'll cut that out.
You got to work on cleaning your hands off of the sunscreen before you touch the lens, Clavin. I'll tell you, man. You get some world-class photos.
Dude, I wiped my glasses before I started this. They were so dirty. It was insane.
There you go.
Yeah.
Lifestyle choices. All right, boys.
All right, Todd. Thank you so much for coming on, man. We'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, huge thanks.
See you, bye.
Holy shit, man. This getting a random text from Todd Richards, one of my childhood heroes, about just kind of impromptu wanting to come on our podcast makes me feel like maybe we're doing something right here.
Yeah, and that flipped in about 5 minutes, and then we got into an actual very serious conversation about everything that's going on right now, which is exactly why we started this podcast. So that was pretty fun.
100%. And likewise, I think that's why Shaun and X Games started these leagues, right? Because normally June 18th, we are not talking about snowboarding. We have nothing to talk about, right? We can have guests on. They always have something to talk about. But this was just a conversation less about you, me, and Todd, and more about the current news in snowboarding on June 18th, which is pretty fucking awesome, if you ask me.
Dude, and if these leagues get off the ground, it's going to be amazing. Like there's a lot of big promises coming, and
Yep.
you can't hold anyone to every single thing they say right now, but it'll be very exciting if they come with like half of what they're hoping to do.
Well, and I also, when we sit there and kind of try to poke holes and stuff, we don't do it maliciously, right? We're
Yeah.
just having a conversation. We're seeing what could go right, what could go wrong. And I feel like snowboarding in general, your average snowboarder is maybe a little bit more pessimistic than the average sports fan, right? Because we've seen contests come and go. We've seen brands come in with a shitload of money and then bail and pull out and kind of leave us high and dry. So make no mistake about it. I personally, and I know you do too, Mark, I want both of these leagues to succeed. I want pro snowboarders to be more famous. I want pro snowboarders to make more fucking money. And I want people to care more about snowboarding. That's the ultimate goal. And I think that's what X Games League and Snow League are both trying to do.
Yeah, this could be a huge step in that direction. And yeah, it'll be fun. Like whatever is going to come up next is just going to be fun to see.
I think we need to get Scotty James on, and I think we need to work on getting Shaun on. I think that'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll want to set the record straight with whatever we said wrong in this one that we didn't know. So yeah, I think that shouldn't be that hard.
100%. All right, buddy. Well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'm excited to put this one out and let people have a listen.
Yeah, for sure.
Later, brother.